to Criminal Justice Corner. I am your host, Dr. Jennifer Matthews. Today, we are going to be talking about the story of Alonzo Brooks. Alonzo Brooks was a native of Topeka, Kansas. Now, Alonzo went to a party with his friends. Some of his friends left the party before him, and they thought that Alonzo was going to get a ride home with someone else. Unfortunately, Alonzo was never seen from again. Let's talk about this. Now, today I have with me a very special guest, Dr. Chris Bush. Now, Dr. Chris Bush and I go way back to the days of me writing my dissertation. He was one of an integral part of me writing my dissertation. I relied on him a lot for some resources. So I'm truly honored to have him as a guest today. Dr. Bush, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Matthews, for having me a part of your podcast here today. Um, yes, I'm originally from Mississippi. I've been in Topeka pretty much for most of my life. Um, Ran track in high school, got a scholarship where I ran 2 years at a junior college in Kansas, came back, finished my undergrad in human services. Then from there, I got a master's in criminal justice and, of course, collaborated with you after I finished my dissertation for my PhD. Um, Currently work for the state, been in many disciplines, employment and training. I've worked in the capacity over with grant management, now serving in a role as a state auditor. I have
Nice.
two sons, married, and that's pretty much it for me.
That's a lot for the record.
Yes.
That is a lot. And I just want to say that with this case of Mr. Alonzo Brooks being in Kansas, this is kind of right down your lane, if you will, because it's in the same geographical area. So I
Right.
definitely want to dive into this with you. I thought that you would be the perfect person to speak about this case with because maybe you might, frequent the area or know the area or even have heard about it in passing. So I definitely want to talk about this case with you today. Now, we know that Alonzo went to a party with his friends, something that we all do. I love to go to parties with my friends, and I'm sure you do too.
Yes.
And he was with his friends at this party. Now, we know that there was some alleged racial slurs spoken to him and his friends at this party. So now we already know that if that's the case, him and his friends are going to feel uncomfortable. They might feel unwanted at this party.
Right.
Nevertheless, they stayed, and that's okay too. Maybe they squashed the beef or whatever the case was, and they were able to continue having a good time. Nice. Who wants to ruin a night out over some mess, if you will? However, the friends left. And now you and I both know that's a golden rule. You come together, you leave together. Is that how you roll, Dr. Bush?
That's how I roll.
Okay.
That's
That's
how
how
I
me and
roll.
my friends roll. If we all came together, you better not leave without me. You better wait.
Right on.
So unfortunately, that is not how it happened in this case with Mr. Brooks. His friends left without him. There was some miscommunication. We know it happens every day. So the friends left without him. He was still at the party. Whenever he left, some people, of course, saw him leaving, but his family never saw him again. So this happened way back in April of 2004. He was 23 years old. So his family, they're like, hey, we know he went to a party. We know he went with his friends. Where is he? So have you ever heard of anything like this happening, let's say to a friend or a family member, like them going to a party and being, miscommunicated with and, have not having a ride home or something?
I would say not to the point of like what happened to Alonzo, but individuals being in circumstances or situations where they have traveled with individuals and like, hey, I'll catch with you guys later, or I'll follow back up with you. Somebody get back to where they at. They haven't heard from them. What's going on? Um, and then, of course, either a day later or a couple hours later, you hear that individual did make it home. And
Mhm.
unfortunately for Alonzo, that wasn't the case. And I'll say this to Dr. Matthews. For instance, my son, who's currently in college, and that's where you hear a lot of individuals that are in college that they travel to different small towns or outside the
Yes.
city, with a bunch of friends as well, and they went to a party and. One of the individuals, or he was with a bunch of individuals, and they were like, "Man, look, we can't find them. Let's just go ahead and leave." Thankfully, my son was like, "Nah, we can't do that. We came together. We're
Yeah,
gonna leave together." So,
absolutely.
just putting that out there to sharing with individuals, and it doesn't have to be young children or young adults. It can be adults as well, because you think that you're at an
Absolutely.
age that you're responsible. Like, are they be able to make it home? Like, it's really important, especially if you're in an unfamiliar area, that to be able to leave with each other if you came with each other.
I think that is so important because sometimes as adults we get complacent. Oh, I'm grown, can't nobody tell me nothing, that kind of thing. Oh, I do what I want, that
Hmm.
kind of thing.
Right,
Sometimes people are just looking out for you. They're not
right,
trying to control you or tell you what to do or take over for you. They're just trying to look out for you as a friend should and would do. That's
right,
okay to look out for others. It's
right,
still the kind thing to do. They're not trying to be your mother or your father. They're just trying to be kind and make sure that you do get home in one piece. Because as we know, unfortunately, with Mr. Alonzo Brooks, he did not get home okay. His
right.
family did alert the authorities, and they did set out search parties to find him, but they were unsuccessful. They found different articles of him, his clothing, like a shoe, I believe they found at first near the home,
Hmm.
but they did not find him. It took
Right,
over a month before they were able to locate him.
right.
Over a month. So imagine the agony of that family
Yes. And
wondering.
yeah, and it was very challenging. For me, I mean, I knew Alonzo.
Oh my
I
God.
He was a lot younger, but I knew him. I knew his brother, Billy, and I knew his sisters. So when I heard this news, the internet was just launching off pretty much at this time. And you're familiar with when individuals send you emails and you're like,
Yes.
"Man, is this a scam or what is this?" And I glanced at it and it came to my work email. And I
Oh
was
my
like, "Well, I
God.
know an Alonzo Brooks." I said, "This probably be something, had to be something fake." So I just
Yes.
took the chance and said, "Well, let me email back and be like, hey, is this the Alonzo Brooks that I know? I know he has a brother by the name of Billy." And then Billy returned the email, "Chris, this is real.
Wow.
This is serious. My brother is missing. Please get the word out." And just from that point on, I've just been really, really, really close to the case, just following it as much as I could. Ended up working with an individual, that was dating, someone that was dating the sister. So
Okay.
they were like really connected. So I was always hearing everything day to day, what was taking place each week, from them going out there actually doing the walkthroughs and so forth, and coming back and not finding things, and then just hearing things allegedly that we have heard over the years. And just like I said, way back then, and it's still the same things that's surfacing. And I was just so glad to see back in 2020 that it resurfaced back up, and was able to make it to Netflix. And hopefully the family's able to find justice.
Yes, and that's where I initially saw it, on Netflix. That's where I first saw it. And what was remarkable to me in that Netflix series, and what really made me want to do the podcast about it, is the resistance that the family got from the police.
Right,
Whenever that happens, I'm like so invested. I'm like, what is happening? Why don't the police want to do their job? Why are they getting pushback? And it stemmed back to the racial divide in that town.
right,
That's what it boiled down to. And that's
right,
sad because we know that there were alleged racial slurs thrown during the party. But for the family to get pushback from law enforcement, people who are paid to help you, I
right,
was floored. I was like, wait a minute, wait 1 minute. This should not be happening. If
right,
they're saying their loved one is missing, this should be all hands on deck, not us fighting law enforcement to get help for our loved one. And that's what
right,
happened. It took them a month just to get permission from law enforcement to be able to searched the property that was surrounding where Alonzo was last seen, and that's where they
Right.
found him.
Right.
So,
And that's an alarm. That's an alarm at the gate. That's just alarming. When you hear that,
yeah,
and and when I speak on this is factual, and you being a researcher, myself being a researcher, that when things like this happen, and if it's law enforcement who's supposed to be the help, and we have already seen things that have emerged, where questions have came to the forefront, where things looked a lot different after it
yeah,
was exposed or it came to light. And not saying that law enforcement had anything to do with it, but that already comes to the front of the mind for the family and friends and individuals that are engaged. Why are you holding back, or what is the pushback for? um, if you are an individual or an agency that are there to help, to provide the assistance for the family. So again, and that was the things that was alleged during that time that was happening, during that when it was happening during that time. Some questioning, like, is there any coordinated efforts, or if there's any individuals that are tied to law enforcement and so forth, um, family, and so the best thing to do is to remove yourself away from it, period.
yeah,
And just this Saturday, I'll say this and I'll let you carry on. Me and you have already talked to share. We both love Dateline. We both love 48 Hours.
absolutely.
Um, it is a window to what we see daily, and what
Yes,
and it walks you through, like, this is similar to this case here, but this past Saturday, a similar situation where law enforcement was involved in a situation, and they totally did not act on the way that they were supposed to, or to another officer came in and took the lead, and the officer was very floored because he had to go against what he called his brothers. But he wanted to do what was right for the family. So in that, knowing that I was going to be speaking with you this week and seeing that, it's no coincidence. Not saying that law enforcement in that town had anything to do with it, but it's just an alarm at the gate for individuals who are closely following this case to question, like, why?
absolutely. And I applaud that officer for doing what's right,
Right.
because a lot of times, and not all the time, but sometimes, people come to work without the best intentions. We see it all the time, and not just in law enforcement. You can see it at McDonald's. You'll see
Yes.
the cashier, she has an attitude and she should have stayed home today. We'll
Right.
see it at the doctor's office. The
Mhm.
nurse has an attitude and she should have stayed home today, or he should
Right.
have stayed home today. It
Right.
happens all the time. Again, we're not saying that the police in this case had anything to do with it, but we
Right.
are saying that there are instances when people come to work and simply do not want to do their jobs. And
Right.
that's unacceptable. Just stay
Right.
home that day. That's
Right.
all we're saying.
That's all
That's
you're
all we're
saying.
saying.
Don't be
Because
a contributing factor to the situation.
that's
And
it.
you mentioned something earlier about the town. So Topeka is the capital of Kansas,
Okay.
and we're very it's a very rural state,
Okay.
of counties. The further you go out in western Kansas, I believe this one might have been northeast, but still a small town that I am not aware of, but familiar with the locations of when you travel outside of Shawnee County to these small remote areas that are rural, or that are
Right.
predominantly white, and that could possibly have those factors that you talked about with the racial slurs and so forth. And the reason, even more so, to be mindful traveling to an area, if it's just you and a few others, where there's not many people that look like you, or associate with you. And
Absolutely.
not saying that the whole town was like that, because they invited them there, and they were welcome there. But all it takes is one
Mhm.
individual to bring individuals to be in the same capacity where they're at, and things happen.
Absolutely. And what is interesting to me is that we know that it took over a month for them to find his body, unfortunately. And we know that during that time his family had to be in agony. But they found his body near the place where he was last seen.
Right.
Imagine if they were not getting that pushback from the police, how much sooner they could have found him. We don't
Right.
know if they were able to search for him sooner. Could he have been helped? We don't know. We
Right.
don't know. Could he have been saved? Could his life have been saved? Could he still be with us here today? We don't know.
Don't
But
know.
because there was so much resistance that the family came up against, this is what we're dealing with now. And that's why I
Right.
think this case is super important to be discussed as a what not to do when a loved one goes missing.
Right. And
I
I like
think
I said, I
go ahead.
think they'll get to an end result. And that's I know that's the goal that, all the people that knew Alonzo and know the family, just watching the Netflix. It's just some things you can't hide.
Yeah,
His body was supposed to have been found by water or submerged in water, but when they
absolutely.
found him, all of his belongings were dry. There was no damage with water damage to it. And the family, from what
Exactly.
I recall, they walked that area several times
Before.
when they were allowed to be there. And then for them to later afterwards found out this is where the body was found. Again, there's just so many different alarms there
That's
that have
suspicious right there.
individuals to kind of like what's going on here?
Right, because it brings up the possibility that maybe whomever did something foul to him was like, maybe this family's going to be relentless. Maybe
Right,
I need to, have him found so that they can stop looking for him. Otherwise, this
right,
is going to get out of control. And that's
right,
sad, but it could have happened that way. We don't know because, like you said,
right,
initially they didn't find any broken bones. They found him near water, but he was dry. It's like, what is going on here? And they
right,
initially couldn't even had determined his cause of death. But we
right,
know that recently they were able to exhume his body and determine that his cause of death was murder. I mean, as it should have been initially. I mean,
right.
you don't just go near a creek of water and, I mean, give me a break. Come on now. So
Mhm.
it should have been that the whole time, or at least undetermined, so that they
Correct.
could continue to investigate it. But I'm happy that now we can at least have the ruling to be homicide, but it's just unfortunate that the family has to go through all of this red tape to get any sort of resemblance of justice. I mean,
Yes.
have you ever heard of other cases like that,
Other than
Alonzo?
what my background is as far as in my research with
Yes.
the body worn cameras, the delayed release of the videos of what families go through with the long wait
Yeah.
time after
All the
their
time.
son or their daughter have been murdered. Um, for the case. But other than that, those are the only things that I could kind of like tie together to it. Um, with being similar to like just that weight and just the family. In the case of Alonzo, since what in 2006, I believe that was it 3 or 2000.
So
Whatever.
initially it was 2004
Three, four.
initially.
Yeah,
Hmm.
just for that and for that period of time. And like I haven't seen the family around, but I know they're in Topeka, but I haven't ran into them. But I did um, run into the young man that was with Alonzo at the party
Oh,
a couple months ago. In the grocery store, and we talked about the Netflix series, and he was the one I believe at the end that you saw talking
okay.
was his best friend.
Mm,
And just the same thing, that the continue the same talk. They know what they know, and they believe what they believe. And again,
mm.
those things that are contributing factors that put other people allegedly to be into it, is still the talk that they all still have. And they're definitely believe that they're going to bring justice for
And
Alonzo.
that's what I hope for the family. Now, we know that you do other work outside of your 9 to 5, if you will, and you recently have published a book. Let's talk about that. We know that the book is called Building Trust, Effective Communication, and Transparency Between Police and Community Members. Let's talk about that book. How did that book even come about?
Well, fortunately, um, being able to meet you as you was finishing up your dissertation, and we were able to continue to stay on the same path with our research being pretty much in the same window, shall I say. And we just from our conversations began to talk, and shared with you that the book chapter that I have had with IGI, and they were looking for me to be an editor. Spoke with you about it, and you were like, "We can co-ed." And so, fortunately, having you also have that vision
Yes.
and being able to, bring it to purpose is how that book came to life. It was about a year and a half project I think we worked on with it. But
Definitely.
what I would say what made it easy, Dr. Matthews, is being able to have an individual who had subject matter expertise like yourself, not just with body worn cameras. You work with offenders. Um, your business currently, what you're doing, working with young women. So being able to bring all of that to light and then kind of intertwine that, and then we pushed it out to individuals to be authors of this book. So really excited that it was released last month. The good news that we both heard that it's on the path for a successful launch.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Now, I will say as well that I am thankful to you for even bringing the opportunity to me because I had not heard about IGI Global until you and I discussed it. And I really felt like in authoring, well, I should say co-editing this book, I felt like it was crucial for the literature, for the I want to say like the criminal justice world, if you will,
Yes.
or the research arena, if you will, because I have a passion for body cameras as well as you do, and
Right.
for different reasons. So you have the passion for being having the footage released as soon as possible, not having the families wait a exorbitant amount of time. For
Right.
me, the passion lies in body worn cameras being efficient for police officers and citizens being used in court. So, those two intersections were crucial in us thinking that this book would be vital in the approach to criminal justice, but also getting that information out there for the police, for the citizens, and anybody in between. We know that
Right.
this book is a research book. We know that it can be used in high schools and colleges. Anybody can read this book and get something out of it. It's 10 chapters long. Each chapter contributes something different to this body of literature. There was a gap that we saw in the literature, and we were like, hey, we got to do something about this. We
Right.
know that in today's climate, there is a divide. We know that. We know that the community is calling for more transparency. We know that every day the police are in the media for one reason or another. And we know that if nothing changes, nothing will get better. So we were like,
Right.
this is our attempt to fix that
Right.
because we can't call ourselves change makers and we're not trying to change anything.
Right.
So us getting together to co-edit this book and bring some type of solution to the table, I thought was necessary, if you
It
will.
was very necessary. And one thing, as we were um, working with the individual authors and ourselves, just building some of the content as well. Often we always hear building bridges, and I know that's what we started out with, connecting the community and police. And I have always used throughout my research the word strengthening, but bridges have already been built. And
Yes.
so what I started saying is, strengthening those bridges, because if you don't have the stability and the strength in those bridges, that when it begins to get a little bit muddy or murky or
Mhm.
challenging, it begins to fall and then it begins
Absolutely.
to divide. But if we can continue strengthening what we have done with this book here, the relationship between police and community, businesses and others, I think that, we can get to the point where we're at. We're not going to make it change by tomorrow, but we
No,
know that through the literature in this book, there is actually some resources there for individuals to be able to work together, to be able to, just get through those challenging times that we're seeing so often on the news.
absolutely. And that's what it's about. Just because you are, achieve that doctoral level, we're both at a scholarly level now. And I
Right.
think that's amazing but it's about what are you continuing to do now that you've reached this pinnacle? Are you just taking that and resting on your laurels, or are you still trying to make a difference? And that's what I feel like you and I both are, passionate about. We're not like, okay, that's enough. We're like, what else can we do? How else can we
Right.
contribute to this cause, this criminal
Right.
justice cause? Because it's not over. Crime happens all day, every day. We
Mhm.
see things like the Alonzo Brooks case happen more and more times than not, unfortunately. So we're
Right.
like, what can we do as scholars to bring some clarity to situations, bring some shine a light on these disparities. So I think that this book will probably be one of many that we embark on, or just a journey that we embark on trying to change the climate that we know and the landscape as of criminal justice as we know it. What do you think?
I definitely agree, and with both of us graduating from Walden with the model social change,
Yes.
and so I know that we were excited because we have authors that are international across
Yes.
borders. So this book
Yes.
expounds and extends outside of the United States, and
Yes.
individuals sharing their research based on what's going on in their communities with law enforcement and so forth. So the change that we were able to embark on for ourselves, I we hit the mark for what we
Mhm.
were challenged with, being graduates of Walden University with our doctoral degrees.
I 100% agree. And now I have a really good question. It's probably a stump you a little bit, but I'm gonna go there with you.
Right.
In a perfect world, how would you like to see criminal justice change for the better?
I would say I'll take it back to like what I stated in my research.
Okay.
Um, Definitely bringing individuals who are not just scholars, individuals who are not just um, individuals who have obtained their degree, rather if it's a master's or undergrad, but bringing some of those individuals who truly can see it from a different view. And I'll share this story here, and I think this is why I'm passionate about bringing people from the outside as well. There was an individual, matter of fact, in Chicago. They said it
Okay.
was a grandmother, and I found this out about, I don't know, 20, maybe 2004, that she was
Okay.
raising 16 children.
In
16,
one house?
one house.
Oh my.
This this was a grandma. This grandma, out of the 16, when they visit her, 15 of them had already been through graduation, um, and most have been through college. Some were going through college. She had one that they were just getting ready to graduate. So this program that was sitting, what they said, between behind walls for
Okay.
rooms with tables, kept trying to build this program, and it's regarding reentry, and it kept failing. They were not
Oh,
able to bring the scholarly minds and the individuals with the academic background and the skills and the experience to be able to, like, how do we get these individuals to stay in school, to be successful, to be able to go home? And someone knew of this grandma that was in Chicago, and they went to her and they asked, how did you get these 16 children or grandchildren of yours through school, in college, and so forth? So she laid out a plan and she told them what she did as a grandma. So
oh
they
my.
took that plan and they implemented it, and then they started to be becoming successful with the
Wow.
programs, working with individuals getting out of prison and so forth. So that's why I think that in order for the criminal justice system to be successful, is just making sure that we stay outside of the box and don't stay within the box.
I could not agree with you more. Like you said, Chicago. I am a native, prideful about living in Chicago. But as we know, Chicago is crime ridden. And
Yes.
I think that is the most important thing that we can do. We need a different approach in against crime in Chicago. The
Right.
same old way of doing things is not working, obviously. So we
Right.
have to come up with something different. Whatever that different looks like. I'm not saying that I have that answer, but I'm
Right.
saying that we have to figure out what that is, what that looks like. Maybe it be trial and error. I don't know.
Right.
But we have to do something different so that we can get different results, because whatever we've been doing here in Chicago, it is not working. It is only
Right.
getting worse. So I am all for whoever we need to talk to to
Right,
get resolved, because people pay money, good money, to live in Chicago, and for them to feel unsafe in their neighborhoods is truly unacceptable.
right,
I'm, like I said, I'm a native of Chicago. I don't live in Chicago. I do work in Chicago. So I am not exempt from the crime in Chicago, but something has to give. So I'm
right,
truly with you in your thinking that we have to think outside of the box. And whatever that looks like, I am going to be a cheerleader for it, because people deserve to feel safe. If you feel
yes,
safe, you'll do better. If you feel safe, you're going to champion for your neighborhood. You're going to have pride in your neighborhood. So, and guess what else? More tourism. People are not going to come to Chicago if they don't feel safe. Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's common sense.
Common
So,
sense.
I'm with you on that one. So, I'm just like, whatever needs to be done. I don't know how tourism or crime looks in your town. Do you know?
Yeah, so Topeka is not really considered a tourism location, although if you're familiar with the Brown versus Board of Education, that's
Yes.
here in Topeka. Um, Crime for a small city here. Last year, actually, we did, I think, broke a record with the um, murders or shootings and so forth. I believe it was a little over 30. I know 32 youth probably is like not a lot of, but
That's a weekend in Chicago.
right,
That's
right.
not good, but it's the truth.
Right. But yeah, so it has its peaks, and then it has its times where there's the gaps where we don't see anything. But
Yes.
um, unfortunately, just by like you said, the way things are now, and I don't know. To me, social media is a gift, and it also can be something that can be that come back and hurt us a little bit, just based on from like
Absolutely.
how individuals utilize social media as a crime way of sharing information for entertainment and not for being able for the purpose of being able to help solve, for instance, like a case like with Alonzo Brooks here. It's probably one of the best resources and tools that we can have today versus 20 or 30 years ago with no
Yes.
social media. um but yeah, Topeka, we see it. Now there is another about 60 miles, Kansas City. They have a little bit more higher rates, a little bit bigger city.
Yeah.
Then of
More
course they're right on
people.
the border of Missouri as well. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, what I always like to do is leave the listeners with tips that they could utilize in case they find themselves in a same or similar situation. Do you have any tips that you can give the listeners today?
I would say I must say two tips. The first
Okay.
one where I talked about earlier is like when we see emails or whatever the tag may be now, don't overlook it. If it's something that you're second guessing, take that chance and like if reach out to those individuals or someone that is in that circle and say, "Is this real?" And
Yeah.
that's what I did with Alonzo Brooks, reaching back out to his brother and was informed that it was a real situation that was going on. Secondly, if you're traveling I know we spoke earlier about any unfamiliar territories. I'm going to
Mhm.
say, even if it's a familiar territory, if you came with someone, make for sure you're leaving with those individuals or provide them with as much necessary information as possible so they can be in contact with you. And we have those resources today where you're able to stay connected to people. So that's my tips for individuals that may find themselves in a similar situation.
And I love those tips. My tip of the day is going to be persistence is the key. We know that Alonzo Brooks' family did not give up. They did not give up the fight looking for him. When they got the pushback from the police, they were still persistent. They were like, our loved one is lost. Our loved one is missing. We are going to persevere. We don't care what you say. We don't care what you do. We're going to find him one way or the other. We hope he's alive, but heaven forbid he is not alive. We're going to find him. And I think that when you come up against adversity, no matter who it is, and I'm not saying to be violent, I'm not saying to be disrespectful, I am saying to persist in a manner that gets you the results that you need. You can still be persistent and be law abiding. you can still be persistent and still get your point across. You can still be persistent and get the results that you need because that's what happened in this case. So
Right.
my tip is to be persistent while still making sure that your needs are met. That's going to be my tip of the day because you just never know what the outcome may be if you are persistent in your pursuit of justice. Because the person that you are, like fighting for, you never know the situation that they might be in. He could have been alive when they found him. We don't know,
Right.
but because they were persistent, they did find him. What if they weren't persistent and they were like, oh well, maybe he would have never been found. But I
Right.
applaud the family for doing what they knew what was right. They did what the right thing was to do, and that was to search and find their loved one. So I applaud them for their efforts, and I'm glad they were able to bring him home so that he could rest in peace. And now what they're doing is still the right thing. They're fighting the good fight the right way. While he's resting, they're still doing what they know to do is right. So
Yes.
that's going to be my tip of the day.
All right.
So, Dr. Bush, I want to thank you so much for engaging in this powerful conversation, which was sorely needed. Thank you for being my special guest today. Can you tell people where they can find you on social media? Do you even have social media? I know you like to operate under cloak and dagger, but if you
Um,
have anything,
I'm definitely on Twitter. I can't
okay.
give you the correct handle name right now. I'm on Instagram. Rarely use that, so I'm trying to get acclimated through that through my sons, trying to inform me how to utilize that for best practices and so forth. And then of course I'm on LinkedIn as well.
So, how can they find you on these channels?
How can they find me on these channels?
Yes. What's your
Um,
Twitter handle?
it's Chris Bush 1CB, and I think that's for
Okay.
all. Yes,
All of those. So,
yes,
LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, but
correct.
not Chris CB on LinkedIn. What would it be on LinkedIn?
Should be just my name, Chris Bush.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. So that is where you can find Dr. Chris Bush, who has authored books, who has been out here fighting the good fight for the criminal justice programs. And if you want to search for Criminal Justice Corner, you can find us on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share the Criminal Justice Corner podcast. You can find us on Spotify and Amazon Music. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend about Criminal Justice Corner podcast, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.